So today I just wanted to take a quick look at this Dewalt brushless XR sander, and I had looked at and actually had purchased and gotten rid of multiple other brands of sanders. I had the Milwaukee M18 and I had the Makita, and both of those are super old. The Makita, it feels like that thing's like 10, 20 years old, I swear, but both of those are really old brushed models. They just really haven't ever spent any time investing in anything new. But DeWalt really didn't have anything, and they just left it with their cordless ones that they sold a lot of. So they just didn't feel the need for a long time. And so when they did finally make one, most of the tools they're making are brushless at that point. So the DeWalt sanders are really the only ones I recommend as a cordless sander. I do really, not having an air hose mostly is what I've always used, as a DA with, an air hose hooked on the end, and which is fine, but it's anything you can cut a cord or an air hose from you is nice. And this is a little bit different of a sander and definitely has a lot smaller of a stroke than a lot of the big DAs and even the corded sanders, especially some of the higher end ones. But this is a really nice random orbital polisher, or random orbital sander, and what I did figure out though is with any of these bigger batteries, to like have a ton of runtime, it's really not worth it to have this massive battery obviously on there. So it's not meant to have like a 6 on there, but even if you go into a compact 4, it's like, you got a pretty good clearance from there, so it's not that bad. But the problem is, especially sanding on automotive stuff, when you don't want to go all the way down to bare metal, to get this thing down to a low speed, I found that the only way to do it is to run it with the 2 amp hour batteries is best. I never use 1.5s for anything. There is a difference. A lot of these kits will have these 2 amp hour batteries, which don't have anything on the side here. There's nothing. It just says, 2 amp. And the side, the stickers are basically the same, but this one has it stamped in there. Lithium ion is right inside molded into the plastic. So that's how you know these new batteries. And also, these new batteries, you hit the button and there's your light. You can look at it and move your finger away. These, you can only look at it while you're holding the batteries down. I used to hate that. So that is nice, but these are actually pretty nice, these old style ones, for the sanders, because they're even weaker. These, if you look at them, the footprints, these are much longer cells. These are new 12700 cells, and these are the old 8650s. So they're longer cells, so it actually is a wider battery. They're the same height and everything, but these give you a nice little power boost for 2 amp hour batteries. You can tell the difference on this, especially with these sanders on low. When you're trying to feather in something, or that's the lowest speed with the old 2 amp hour battery. So it's even pretty high, like on a DA air sander, I would, you kind of feather things in. And I do wish that they made a, more of a traditional style with like a paddle grip top on it, kind of, where that's or something where there's actually a button you hold down and sand. It's nice for if guys doing big planks, sanding down tons of trim or whatever, a lot of household work and things like that. Construction guys will want this switch that you just lock on it and you can just go to town. But for me, I like to have the control when you're doing, body lines and things like that on cars. So more for what I do, I generally run it on one almost always. So, But it is an awesome little sander, and I actually have the other one too, and I was going to do a video on that one next. The sheet sander I really haven't even busted out. I just recently got it and haven't even got to really mess with it too much, but I have two of these. I use one with a soft pad on it. It's with my wet sanding kit, and I use that with Trizac pads, which is like 3000 grit, like a foam stuff that really takes all the scratches out before you buff something. And I use that one actually with water and stuff. Not a ton. When you're wet sanding, you're not like drenching things. It does make a little bit of a mess, but it's done pretty well for, you know, being in a battery sander and using it with wet sanding. But so that one I use just for that, so that I don't get any, you know, sanding down on bare metal, nasty rust and stuff is much different than using 3000 grit on a DA and sanding down fresh paint and stuff, knocking out orange peel and things of that nature. So I have a designated one for wet sanding, and this is for sanding anything else down. And I still have my other sanders, and I will have to use those sometimes, but generally I try to use this just because I hate having to drag a cord out or drag an air hose around with me. So I definitely recommend this. You can get this for some pretty good deals on Amazon and on at Lowe's. You know, twice a year they have different sales where you used to be able to find them for $99. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case this year, but everything's kind of gone up in price. So I'm not sure what the sales will be this year. It might end up being 120, but a lot of times it'll be for the kit instead of, and they'll be the old kits a lot of the time with these old batteries. The ones I got had the old batteries in it, but still, like I said, I like these for using this. You don't get a ton of runtime out of them, but I also have a ton of 2 amp hour batteries, so I can go to town as long as I want with this and just use 2 amp hour batteries. So I guess that's something to consider too. I mean, mostly I would say if you're doing any long-term sanding, you're probably better getting a corded sander, but for what I do, I'm not like using just this a lot. I have a bunch of other things, and I have an air file that I still have to use with a air hose, but that's a big long plate sander, and that's doing big sections. But I generally will just cut things off or straighten them almost perfect, to where I try not to use any Bondo. If I mean, you have to on seams and stuff but being a welder and doing a lot of fabricating, I would much rather cut off damage or rust and put in whole new metal than try and save it and build up Bondo in the bad spots and stuff, because that Bondo, it's not a long-term fix. That stuff starts to decay and break down and bubble up after a while. Moisture gets between it and the metal, so it's definitely a lot more sanding with the Bondo. So I don't do a ton of that stuff, and unless you're doing like fiberglass, putting in like body kits, things like that, which this is pretty nice too for that. I do wish they made the bigger, 6-inch disc as well, and I wish that they had a switch on top, and even a smaller version, like a Snap-on Air one that I have is a 3-inch, and that's a really nice little sander for when you're repairing like a dog leg on the back door, in between the wheel well and the back door of a car. When you just want to sand that, but you don't want to get all into, you get onto too long of a pad, and it just eats up the edges on both sides. It'll go down to bare metal, and a lot of times you might not have to primer all that, but once you get down to bare metal, anything that goes to bare metal has to be primered. So going too heavy with a sander is, it adds a lot of work working on cars, doing paint, body, and stuff. So that's another reason I like this thing with the smaller batteries, idle down as much as possible. Better to take your time and do it and not have those extra steps and time and material, and a lot of times trying to rush through jobs. As a younger guy, I used to try and, you take these shortcuts, which I call them shortcuts because most of the time they end up kicking you in the butt, and I end up doing extra work trying to fix it. And so But yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out if you're interested in going cordless. This is the only one I would recommend. I don't recommend. I mean, the Milwaukee one was fine. Even the Makita one, it was fine, but they're awkward. They're really tall and bulky. This thing's probably an inch or so shorter, and the battery placement is a lot better on this, I feel like, than it's a much more comfortable sander. It feels like an actual, maybe like a corded foam sander. So they made a lot of improvements. So they kind of got lucky holding off and not coming out with those sanders years ago when everyone else came out with theirs. And Dewalt waited, but they came out with the only brushless sander on the market, really, as far as like Makita, Dewalt. I actually, Cobalt 24 volt also does have a brushless sander. I've never used it, but maybe I'll get one and check it out. They're pretty cheap, and you can get a lot of good deals with like buy more, save more and things with the Cobalt, which I do have some Cobalt line. That's the three I really have is Cobalt, Milwaukee, and Dewalt. But so maybe I'll check out that Cobalt sander and see what I think on it. But I mostly. I would say this is, that one's more shaped like the Makita. It reminds me of it when you look at it, so I'm not 100%, but maybe I'll have a video of that one coming out here soon. But thanks for watching, and check out the next video.